Welcome to the Dash Mindset Podcast. I'm Sherry Zievenbergen. You were born, you're gonna die, and your adventure is your dash in between. So make the most of it. Unlock your potential in all aspects of your dash by embracing your uniqueness and living in a way that's authentic to you, not by doing more things, but by focusing on the right things. I'm a former corporate leader turned coach who's on my own journey, and I'm passionate about helping you on your journey too. So on the podcast, we'll explore how to live authentically by deciphering who you truly are and what you truly want. Are you ready to take a step toward designing your dash? Someday doesn't actually exist, so let's do it now. Hello and welcome to the Dash Mindset. This is Sherry Zievenbergen, and today I'm super excited because my friend Sue Barber is here. Sue was also in episode 14 of the podcast, so I would love for you to listen to that again because the focus in that particular episode was Sue. In this particular episode, we're going to talk more. It's just basically going to be a conversation about me and Sue. And some of the differences between us and the similarities. And what spurred all of this was the fact that I did the podcast episode about my surprise trip, the surprise trip my husband and I went on. That was in episode 35, I think. So Sue has written a book. She wrote The Visibility Factor, which is an excellent book. I highly recommend. She's now in the process of writing another one. And when she and I were chatting, as we often do, we were just laughing about the differences between ourselves and the fact that going on a surprise trip is not something that would be on the top of her list. So I'm going to let you just kind of expand upon where that led because, and I also want to point out, so Sue has ideation as one of her top 5 strengths, and she spews ideas all the time. And she's an excellent source of ideas. Sometimes too many because I'm thinking, okay, now what do I do with all this? What do I do with all these great ideas? So anyway, Sue spewed ideas about this, and that's what led us here. And now, Sue, I'm going to let you just expand upon all that. And thank you for being here.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here because we chat all the time. So this will be really fun. So yes, we were talking about my new workbook that's coming out next year, and it's called Your Journey to Visibility. And so I was talking about how I was putting different stories in the book and different things. And I wanted to use Sherry's story, which you heard in her podcast episode, where she is going on this surprise trip. And I was alluding to the fact that I'm talking about you and how I really admire your sense of adventure and that you and your husband are getting to do this and introducing the sense of adventure to your kids too, right? Of how they can travel. You don't have to say, I can't do it, or there's lots of reasons why people will say they can't do it. I don't have the money. I don't do this. I don't do that. And instead, you're just showing them that's possible. But one of the things that I was thinking about when I was writing that story is, oh my gosh, I could never do a surprise trip. That would freak me out. I would not, even though I know what to travel and what to pack and when I got to be there, I just would not be comfortable with that. So even though sometimes I'll tell people I'm not a planner, maybe in some ways I am in that respect. I do want to know where I'm going. I do want to do a little research and figure out where I'm going to be and what I want to see. And so it led us down this path. And then she made a comment to me about, I could just be dropped off in China and be totally fine. And I said to her, oh my God, there's no way I could do that. There's no way. First of all, I don't speak the language. But, it would freak me out to do that. So anyway, it just led us down this path of how different people might respond to things that are pushing them out of their comfort zone, making them feel, differently about what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. And some people are more left-brained people. Some people are more right-brained people. And I have traditionally been a left-brained person. And I'm expanding over into the right brain and doing more creative things now. And so I don't think it would freak me out as much other than certain things where I don't speak the language, but it definitely made us talk about why is that different for us between the two of us? Because we're alike in a lot of ways.
Right. And so something I want to point out is I think the reason I said something about being dropped off in China was because you, Sue, are a tech guru in my mind. And tech makes me I just don't have the desire to figure it out. You're the person I often call and say, okay, this is a thing. I don't want to think about this. I don't want to take 4 hours to do something that you could figure out in 2 minutes, Sue. So I feel like maybe that all stemmed from you talking about something tech related. And maybe not, I'm not sure. And I probably said, oh, I would much rather just be dropped into China and figure that out, then figure out how to do whatever tech related.
Yep, I think you're right. Mm-hmm.
And I also need to share. So at the beginning of this call, you were talking about the fact that you have a new camera, and it just gave me just that my brain. I was making that sound because that to me is frustrating, but I can figure out how to navigate in China.
Yeah, exactly. Look, two opposite ends of the spectrum for us, right?
So Sue and I talked about this because, like she said, it's something that came up when she was writing her workbook, but also because we are so similar in a lot of ways, because Sue's a coach and consult as well. Sue and I both spent over 20 years in the corporate space. We both dealt with ambiguity, lots of that, challenges. We love to problem solve so many things, yet there are differences between us. And so I guess I just kind of wanted to use this as an example of, because so often I feel like we sometimes not deliberately, but we almost look for the differences between ourselves and other people, and we separate ourselves from other people due to those differences rather than focusing on those similarities. So I just kind of wanted to point that out because Sue, you and I are great friends. What do we Voxer like once every couple days, right?
At least. Mm-hmm.
Yet I know you're never going to go on a surprise trip with me. And I don't have to say, well, I'm not going to be friends with Sue because she doesn't like to travel. Who cares, right? You're not my travel friend, right? And I'm not the friend that you come to if you need tech, I don't know, assistance and whatever. Right. So anyway, so I just wanted this to be a conversation, and Sue and I are pretty good at that. So I don't know if hopefully people will want to listen to that, I guess. So
I'm sure we're going to send out some greatness in this episode. Well, when you were thinking about that, like I was really thinking about this after we talked, because I kept trying to figure out what is it that makes us different when it comes to travel. Obviously, adventure for you. And one of the things I was trying to figure out is it when I'm traveling by myself? Is it when I'm traveling with a group? What's the difference there? Like, is there something there, right? I'm more comfortable if people are with me. Like if I had to go to China, I would definitely want some people with me who spoke Chinese, and it would help me because I wouldn't understand the language. But if you and I were going to go, I don't know, to Paris even, I feel like I would be able to figure it out. So it's just, I think there's something to do with the language, maybe the food choices, like what I eat or don't eat. And I don't know, there's just pieces of that I think come up for me initially when someone says, hey, do you want to travel here? My brain goes to, can I navigate there? Is it going to be comfortable for me? Or is there something else I need, like a person to come with me or somebody to be a guide when I get there? Something like that, I think that shows up for me in my brain.
Well, that's a really good point too, because I think a lot of times we consider ourselves we consider ourselves to be a certain person, or we're just not. So like you said, you've traveled to lots of places. You've traveled to India, you've traveled to Italy. You do travel. So it's not that, oh, I don't travel. And it's not that, oh, I'm talking about the surprise trip only because that was kind of the foundation of this other episode. It's not like every trip I go on is some surprise, but you are a traveler. You just travel in a different way. And it's not good or bad. Like, it's not like, oh, I'm saying, oh, I'm a traveler. Everyone should be. I guess the whole point of all of this is to just kind of talk about our differences and that we aren't a thing or aren't not a thing. They're just variations. So one thing we were talking about when we started this, Sue, was because you had done the Hogan assessment with me, and I did the UMAP assessment with you at one point. So I was looking back at your UMAP and reminding myself, your top 5 strengths are ideation. And I thought, yeah, okay, I remembered that for sure because I'm reminded of that every time I ask you a question. And I benefit from that. And strategic and futuristic, all 3 of which are thinking strengths. So you have 3 of your top 5 strengths that are thinking strengths. So you're thinking a lot. And you have achiever, which is executing, positivity, which is obvious to anyone who knows you, which is relating. And I have just one thinking strength in my top 5, which is learner. So we were just talking about the fact that I'm kind of learning as I go because I have more executing strengths. And so that's a difference too, because you're probably thinking more about whatever trip you're going on and all the details behind it. And I'm just kind of I'm more, oh, I'll figure it out as I go, which isn't good or bad or, either way. And then we were talking about our values, and we have a lot of the same values, and a couple of mine that make me particularly excited about travel would be adventure and curiosity, which aren't two of your top values. So I think those are kind of the main differences. Okay, I kind of just went off on a tangent there, but I would just love for you to talk about, okay, when you have traveled in the past, what are your, was kind of your thought process, and what would you share with people about anything that they're interested in that they think, oh, I can't do that because I'm not a traveler, or I'm not a whatever.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think for me, I didn't travel out of the country until I was 40. And I had a brand new baby who was 6 months old when I had to go to London for the first time for work. And so there was definitely this, oh my gosh, I have this brand new little baby and I'm going out of the country and I've never been out of the country. So like all that stuff went up in my brain. And as an overthinker, maybe in some ways, it just made me really stop to think about, how can I do this? How can I don't want to miss any of his milestones. I literally was thinking about that kind of stuff. And he did stand while I was gone. And I'm like, please take a picture, please take a picture. So, all of those things, that you just can't imagine missing. And so there's this FOMO, right? I have of not being here, but also wanting to go see the world. And so I think what's interesting is, I go into these logistical things in my head, which are not probably helpful. And that's where the overthinking about this stuff kind of comes in. Like, what am I going to wear? What am I going to pack? What am I going to eat? Like, there's just these, I don't know. It's really interesting to me because when I've told people that I get a little anxious before I travel, they're so surprised because I have traveled. I've been to Singapore. I've been to India. I've been to Zurich. I've been to all these amazing countries and seen it. And I think I always get such a great perspective out of traveling because you meet people, you get to learn from them, what they live in, how they experience life. It opens up your world. And I'm so, so grateful that I get to do that with craft, because I don't know that maybe I would have never traveled had craft not introduced me to some of that, which is amazing. But I think while I'm there, I'm always just mindful, I guess, of what the experience is and trying to take it all in and be a part of it. But there's definitely some things that I don't know, like, in India, there's cows on the road with you. That's not something you see here, right? There are, just a whole different way of operating. And so it does open your mind up to, oh, wow, okay, this is horns honking nonstop in India because that's how they change lanes. There's not traffic lights that people are obeying on a regular basis like they do here. So it's just a very different way of living. And you're kind of put into this place of, it's a little chaotic, right? But you start to see that it works. Everybody knows what to do there. They've all lived in that. And like we're being dropped in, just like you talked about China, we were dropped into India we traveled to, I think, 5 different parts of India. So traveling domestically on a plane in India is a different experience. They load planes from both the front and the back. We don't do that here. So like it's all these little norms we're used to that get challenged. And it just opens your mind up to new possibilities, which as a futuristic person, I love. Mm-hmm. And so I love it once I get there. I think it's maybe, am I going to have everything I need? Am I going to be, I don't know, it's that perfectionist still shows up in me sometimes. Mm-hmm. Am I going to have everything? Am I going to be able to navigate this? Am I going to do well, right? Whatever that means. Like no one's taking a report card against me that I'm doing the right things or not, but it just exposes you to new things. So that's the part that I love, because as a learner as well, I learned so much. And so many of those things, I think, really changed me profoundly when I came back, because you appreciate what you have. You appreciate all the people that you met. And just, they are so grateful and excited. Like I was leading a support organization. Many of those people that I met, basically work in my organization as an extension of my team. Mm-hmm. And they were wonderful and they gave us gifts and, it was just a lovely experience and one that I wouldn't trade for the world. But, I have to mentally be prepared to do that kind of thing. I can't just go on a whim.
So a couple things that came to mind when you were talking through that. One, I think something that a concern about doing well when you're in a place like India is I think what qualifies as doing well is if you make it across the road alive.
True. Yes.
So you've been successful on your trip to India.
Yes.
And then, but also it was making me think too, that because you do have so many thinking strings and that's so natural for you, that I suspect it's easier for you to be present in those kinds of situations. Would you say that's pretty natural for you, Sue?
Probably. I mean, I think you and I share connection as, our values. And I was just amazed by the people and how lovely they were. They're the happiest people, I swear, that I met when I was there. And you and I were talking a little bit about going to places where they wanted to take pictures of us, right? And they wanted to do, because we're both kind of blonder, right? And so we stood out. And I remember being with one of my colleagues and we're wearing these, we didn't dress appropriately. Unfortunately, we didn't get the memo on that. So again, I wasn't prepared in that respect. But anyway, they gave us these saris to wear. And we went to both the Taj Mahal and to Arkshardam. Oh my God, it was so beautiful. I can't even tell you how beautiful it was. But we're in these spaces and we stand out because everybody who's wearing an orange sari, they know that they're a tourist who didn't dress appropriately. And so
now wait a minute. Is that what you think made you stand out, Sue?
I felt like it was like a blinking light, like Americans who don't know what to do here, is what it felt like. And, of course, the other part that was cool about this is you can't wear shoes in Arkshardam anyway. And so we're walking around on this beautiful marble and in your bare feet. I mean, it's just such an experience to be in there and see all the gold and everything. So anyway, that just hit me. And then people were trying to take pictures with us like we were celebrities. And I wasn't prepared for that. I was like, what's going on right now? And one of the people actually gave my colleague a necklace. And she's like, I can't accept that. He's like, no, you please, my family would want you to have it. And so it's just, you can't imagine that happening here necessarily, right? Where someone's calling you out when you're in a park or at a museum or something and saying, I want to take your picture. It's just,
that would just be creepy.
It's just
that would just be weird.
What's happening right now. But there it was completely normal. It was just normal. And so things like that just really give you perspective of just the care and kindness and connection that people want to make. And it makes you slow down and think about that. And so I really, since I've moved into this world of coaching and consulting and outside of corporate, I have definitely shifted my thinking and how I show up, and I do take more risks. I mean, having your own business is an inherent risk all by itself. So, I mean, there's just things I have changed. And would I feel comfortable traveling with a little bit of a plan? You betcha. I would do that. But I think it is the first thing I think about. And I don't know that that's necessarily the first thing you think about, is having a complete plan. And maybe, I don't know, it'd be interesting on your surprise trip, if he had no plan and he said, we're just going here and we're just going to show up, how would you feel about that?
That would have made me nervous. And it was kind of funny because Derek / Wandering Earl was kind of joking because I said something about, so you're not going to tell us what we're doing tomorrow, right? Because he wanted, every day was kind of a surprise. And everyone on the trip was completely comfortable with that because we had all most of us had traveled with him before. So it's not, just this wandering guy. But it was kind of funny because one night Derek said, let me just get my phone here. And he's like, things to do in Bangladesh. And he was, pretending. So he clearly had a plan, and you knew he was doing things behind the scenes too, right? To make sure that we were, taken care of. And he was taking us to restaurants that were, that weren't going to make us sick, all those things. What's interesting to me, Sue, something you and I talk about a lot, is how you are very good at, okay, let me step back. So when Matt and I travel together and we travel with our boys, I'm often kind of reading about where we're going on the plane on the way to where we're going.
I just felt my heart race right there when you did that.
Because I really want to be able to shift based upon, oh, well, we want to stay here for a couple days. We want to stay. And I don't want to feel like, oh, we already have these plans. We already have these hotel reservations. Now we have to leave. And, oh, we heard about this other place and we can't go there because we have all these other plans. Right. So it's very important to me to come up with a plan. We don't just get there and I wake up and think, oh, what are we going to do today? That makes me want to claw my eyes out. The whole thought of that. Every night I plan about what we're going to do the next day.
Okay.
But I'm okay planning just beforehand. But anyway, what makes me, what's interesting is that you don't have any nervousness around getting other things done kind of last minute. I guess kind of the same way I plan a trip, you do other things more last minute. And I'm just thinking, wait, what? How are you going to do that? So it's funny. Isn't it just interesting how we operate differently? But I don't know, we're human. We humans are just interesting.
Yeah. Well, you made me think of a story that you might laugh at because it's going to be closer to you than to me. When my friend and I, we were in Zurich for work and we wanted to spend the weekend somewhere else. And the train system in Europe is amazing, right? You can just get on a train and be wherever. And so we decided we were going to go to Italy. Well, at that time, as happens, periodically, Venice was, not doing well water-wise. There was a lot of flooding and stuff. And so we're like, okay, what other part of Italy should we go to? And we really wanted to go to a place in Italy that was further, and it wasn't going to really work out time-wise. How about Milan? Let's go to Milan. Okay, let's go to Milan. So literally that morning, we made a hotel reservation because we weren't going to get into Milan until like 11:30 at night. And we didn't want to not have a hotel because I didn't, of course, know where to go when we get there. So this is the funny part of the story. So when we get out of the train station, we find a cab and we tell him the name of our hotel. And I can't remember the name of the hotel right now, but it's like a really cool name. And he literally drives us around the piazza to our hotel and drops it. It was like, we could have definitely walked it. It was maybe 2 blocks tops, but we're in a square. It was literally from one side of the square to the other. And he's probably looking at us like, okay, sure, I'll drive you there. It's not that far, but like, we didn't know where we were going. So it was just the funniest story. And there's a scene like that in a movie that I cannot remember the name of the movie now, but it's got Robert Downey Jr. and Marissa Tomei. And they do the same thing. They get at the train station, they jump in a cab and they go around and there is their hotel. And of course the person's like, okay. So it just made me laugh so hard. And yeah, we were so tired and just like ready to be in there, but it was just hysterical how that happened. So like things like that. And I remember my boss saying to me, you don't have a hotel yet? It was probably 10 o'clock in the morning. You don't have a hotel yet? I'm like, no. Now, interesting, right? Like that we didn't plan out. And I think it was because I knew she was going to be with me. We would figure it out. And I wasn't really stressed out about it, honestly. And we did the same thing to Paris, except we had to fly to Paris. So we worked that out a little differently because we had to get a plane reservation. But it's just at certain times, I think it's where I either don't have somebody and I'm on my own and I know I'm going to have to figure it out. And it's the unknown or uncertainty of that. But yeah, you're right. I very often will be writing a presentation the night before or the day of. And that stresses Sherry out to no end because she'll send me a message and then I'll leave her a message back and I'll say, well, I got to get this done. I've got to present in a half hour. And she's like, oh my God, why are you leaving me a message?
Really? I could have waited a couple hours.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just like, I have to do this now and then I'm done. So I think it's I'm wondering if it's part of our experiences, right? In our working world or maybe growing up.
Yeah.
Because I think I was telling you a story where when I was working in customer service, I was training them on all the systems changes that we were doing.
Yes.
And I literally, this is before the internet we have today, where you could just send a file. You couldn't do that. You had to actually overnight books, hard copy books. And so they would overnight them. and I would get them, but like an hour before I had to present it. And so there's no time to digest a lot of the material. And so I got really good at thinking on my feet. I got really good at presenting as I'm learning it, honestly, and being able to do things with high pressure. And I think that is something that is a gift or a curse. I don't know which that I have.
It's a gift because it works out for you every time. Yeah.
It does. I have gotten better about trying to write presentations in advance for things that I think people are going to want to talk to me about before I present.
But you don't need to. Yeah. It works for you. It works for you.
Yeah, it does work for me. So it's good. It works. But, I think some people, it could stress them out, right? If I said, I'm going to do your presentation in 3 days, but I haven't written it yet, they might get stressed out by that. So I do things differently depending on who I'm talking to and what I have. And if it's something I've written already, obviously I'm just tweaking it. It's not a big deal. But
right.
There have been some I have written, completely from scratch. And it's just a gift, I guess, as you said. So I'll try to look at it that way and not a curse.
Oh, it absolutely is. And I'm not, it doesn't make me super nervous. I know you're going to get it done. I think when it does make me nervous is when you're leaving me a message right beforehand. And I'm thinking, wait, what made you believe that I needed a message right now?
I don't know. Yeah. Sometimes it's something you said that made me laugh, or I just wanted to respond. I don't know.
When you were talking about how your boss said you don't have a hotel yet, it made me think too how much other people's reactions cause us to have certain beliefs that might prevent us from doing certain things.
Yeah.
Right. Because you probably, when he said that, you thought, oh, wait, maybe I should have a hotel. Maybe I am going to have to sleep on the street. Maybe blah, 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 blah. And that could be one of those things that really holds people back, because so many people are sharing so many of their thoughts about what everybody else should be doing. Right. But it's based upon their own experiences and their own fears and their own whatever.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah. I mean, he definitely is probably more of a planner in many ways. And he's lived all over the world, which is interesting, right? So maybe he's lived in the place or traveled to a place that he didn't get a hotel. And so that moment triggered him like, oh my God, you were two girls, traveling to Italy at the time. But I was thinking about growing up, like we would have never changed plans. We would have had, here's the hotel, here's where we're going to go visit, here's what we're doing. Because we didn't take a ton of vacations growing up. And so when I got this role at Kraft and moved into a global role and there was, opportunities for travel, I'm like, of course I want to do that. That'll be amazing. But I never really thought about it because I think I just didn't travel. Like my first trip was when I was 40 years old. And so, I was clearly an adult by then to be able to do this, but it's just not something I was used to. Now I think like your kids, for example, have traveled with you to many places. And it's an experience that they've had. And so it would be completely normal for them to go travel to somewhere new. I've tried to take my kids to places in the US just as mom and child trips. And we've done that. But my one daughter loves to travel. She has already gone to Spain and she's going Belgium next. And so she is definitely a travel girl. Like she loves the adventure of it. But she also wants to have a bit of a plan. So she's kind of got the best of both of us, maybe you and I.
Yeah.
Like where she loves it so much. And she goes with a bunch of friends. We've never talked about her going by herself. If she would, I think she probably would, though. She's just adventurous that way. She's not really worried. And I never thought I'd have to sleep on the street in Italy. Honestly, it just never even occurred to me that would be a problem. But, maybe I should.
Sorry if I've instilled that concern now.
Maybe I should have. But I do think I want to have at least the initial plan. I think it doesn't have to be perfect and it can be changed. I'm open to that for sure.
Well, and also it's not that you are fearful of things or that you're risk averse because you have your own business. You were able to do presentations on the fly the morning you received these actual hard copy books. You have led all kinds of ambiguous initiatives, when you were at Kraft, and all the presentations you're doing now. It's not like anyone is saying, "Hey, Sue, here's what you need to do." You're figuring it all out on your own. So yeah, it's just funny how how just little things make big differences. But, it just means that, okay, you and I might not travel together, but we're still, you're still an awesome friend. And it's just interesting how I think some people just kind of think, oh, well, I don't know, this person is different in this way. And then we just kind of separate ourselves from people rather than focusing on the similarities in a lot of cases, I think.
Well, I wonder, if you and I had met before we became coaches, because coaching changes you as a person, right? So we've both been through coaching and have experienced those transformations for ourselves. And I think we now recognize that we might have old limiting beliefs or old stories that we're still holding on to, and we can recognize that as a story and we can change that story. And so that's why I think, going out of the country now would probably be a very different experience for me than it was back when I was at Kraft, because I hadn't been through coaching at that point. And I definitely had some old limiting beliefs that would say you have to do things a certain way and you can't travel out of the country without a hotel and you can't do all these things. So I think those are things that I have now challenged in myself and in my family to say we don't have to live by that story anymore. We can let that go and do something different that really makes us happy. And so I think that's where my positivity comes into play now in a bigger way, where I life is too short. I don't want anyone to not have the experiences that they want to have in their life because they say it costs too much. I think about you all the time when someone might say that to me, and I'll say, my friend, they do some searching online and they found trips for $200. You have $200, right? Well, yeah. But I think we make it up into this big, expensive thing. And even my daughter, said, Mom, we could go here for this amount. And I said, are you sure? Because again, in my head, it's a big amount. And she said, yeah, I've checked it out. Here's how much it would cost us to do this and this and this. And it really is the unknown versus actually doing some research and planning and talking to people, and people like you who have done it on much less money than people might expect, but still had a tremendous experience out of it. And I think it's an easy excuse to give when you have fear. Just say, it costs too much. I can't go there. I don't think that would be, where I want to go. I want to go somewhere else, but I don't know where that is, but it costs too much again. So I think we just create stories and excuses that keep us small. And I definitely did that in corporate. And in some ways, it's possible to do it in your personal life as well.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And what's really funny is oftentimes when we do travel internationally, when we come back, we have a little bit of sticker shock when we see the prices of things in the US.
Yeah.
Because and not every place is super cheap, right? But I remember, so my friend and I went to Vietnam in January 2020. And I had so many massages when I was over there because they were so cheap and they were good. And then I came back to the States and a couple months later had a massage. And I thought, wait a minute, that's just for one massage? Or do I get a punch card and I get to come back for, 12 more? And, clearly I knew that was really the cost, but we were paying, I think, we shared hotel rooms. And I think the total for some hotel rooms was $20 a night. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Oh, wow. That's really cheap.
And I don't know what it is now, that was in 2020, but, it's just interesting how, we just think things through differently. I love what you said, though, about limiting beliefs, because we create these stories in our head, most of which come from other people, what we've been told and what we've seen other people experience, because we haven't allowed ourselves to have those experiences.
Yeah. And I think because my parents had never traveled out of the country, even I'm trying to think, I don't even know if any of, their siblings had traveled out of the country, so it wasn't like the experiences were things that they'd ever had before or seen in other people. And so when it comes to me doing them, it probably brought some fear for them. Like, oh my gosh, she's traveling out of the country. What's she going to do? They probably went into that place, and I might have picked up some along the way. Like, how do you know where you're going to stay? When are you leaving? Like, my dad used to want my complete itinerary before I traveled anywhere. And I remember on one of the last trips I took, he sent me a text, and it was just so sweet. I wrote that text and kept it because he was really proud of me and said some great things that he probably would not necessarily always say to my face. But I knew, like, he would say, have a good trip. I hope you'll be safe, all these nice things. And so I kept that because I thought that he may not say that again to me. Right. And so it's those things that I think we pick up on, the fears, to your point, of what other people have or have said to us or have experienced. I mean, if someone's traveled and it hasn't been a good experience, you hear that, right? And you think, oh gosh, could that happen to me? I mean, I remember people saying you have to be, especially in India, you have to be careful. You can't drink the water because your body's not used to it. And I remember, I'm a Coke in the morning kind of girl. And so I remember we went to breakfast and I ordered a Coke without thinking about it. And they brought me a glass of ice and a Coke. And I literally was about to pour my Coke in the ice. And somebody said, Sue, you can't drink that. And so had I lived in there, the country for many years, my body would have been used to that. But I probably would have made myself sick. I'm like, oh my gosh, could I just have a glass without ice? But it's like you literally have to force yourself to think that way. You can't brush your teeth with the water, so it's like, it's really challenging because you're just not used to it and you're putting yourself in this uncomfortable situation. But I tried some foods that were out of this world, so amazing, that I'd never had before. So all of those things, I think we just have to be open to experiences and knowing that it's going to be different and it's going to put us out of our comfort zone. But just think about all the learnings we're going to have from it and how we're going to look at the world differently. And people are people, right? Wherever they are. And they may live differently than we do. They might feel uncomfortable coming here, right? And seeing our amazing, most of the time traffic world that follows. They're like, why can't I just go? Why can't I just drive? So I think everybody has these experiences when they travel. It's just different, but it doesn't mean it's bad. It's actually a good thing.
Well, and I like how all of that ties to other people's concerns about anything and how those play a role in our lives. So, other people might be wildly opposed to starting your own business. I think a lot of people I know who, when they started their business, had a lot of concerns from friends, family, everybody who didn't understand. Valid concerns, right? But a lot of people will get concerns from friends or family when they just switch a job or when they, just anything. I mean, I know my mom, for instance, gets concerned if I order something on a menu that she has never tried before. Well, what if you don't like it? Well, then I won't eat it. She's less concerned anymore because I'm always ordering something different. Yeah. But, it's just funny how big of a role all of those things play to us. So
that's a great point.
I think we need to consider, okay, well, what do we really need to be concerned about and what means the most to us? And how do we live those things out? How do we order what we want from a menu? How do we start our own job or own business if we want? How do we switch jobs? How do we, whatever it is?
I mean, what helped me, because I wasn't expecting that. I didn't expect people to be opposed to me starting my own business. I never even considered that as a challenge. And I remember my dad saying, well, if you think it's the right thing to do. And I was like, yeah, I do. And I mean, I was really confident in that moment. I hadn't even started it. Yeah, I was like, of course I do. It's perfect. I'm going to go do major things, right? But I remember other people in my life, and I thought, this is so interesting. Why aren't they happy for me? And at the time, I had started doing podcasts, and I remember having to tell the story. And it really occurred to me at that moment, it's not my risk taking that is really the problem. It's theirs. They're really risk averse. And so it's just their fears playing out on me. Like they're just projecting those onto me. And when I realized that, then I had a lot of compassion for them, right? Because starting a business isn't for everyone. It definitely, it requires a different kind of scrappiness, right? To bring it to life. And it's not for everybody. And some people require the security of a paycheck. And some people require obviously benefits. If I didn't have my husband's benefits, it would be a different story. I might have to do something different. So I think it's all of that kind of comes into play. But once I had the acceptance of it's about them and not me, I was able to let that go. And it really helped me because there's a lot of times where people may disagree with what I'm doing or not doing. And I just trust myself now a whole lot more than I ever did before. And most of the time it turns out great, right? And if it doesn't, then I'll do something different next time. I view everything I do as kind of imperfect action, doing experiments, trying things out, seeing what works, and getting feedback. And if it doesn't work, I'll do it a different way next time. I just don't really stress about it anymore.
Life's just one big experiment, really.
That's a great way to say it. 100%.
It's a series of experiments. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a series.
And I think often too, people don't want to lose the person they know either. Right. So, I mean, just people at Craft knew you as Sue, who comes in and, does kick-ass stuff at Craft, and you problem solve and you do these trainings and all these things, and then all of a sudden, I'm going to start my own business and be a coach. Wait, what? That I don't know you that way, right? So
that's a great point. That really is.
So
true.
Not only are they fearful for themselves, and they would maybe not choose that path, they're also thinking, but that's not who I'm accustomed to you being, and I like the you are now.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I remember when I went through coaching school, and I don't know if you experienced any of this, but people in the coaching school world, I think it was my third class in, they said, you need to tell your family you're going to be a different person. And I was thinking, I don't know what that means. What do you mean?
I do.
What are you doing? It was a remote environment, so it wasn't like they were taking me somewhere or anything like that. But it was, I remember thinking, what? I'm supposed to be here to learn how to coach. What are you talking about me? I wasn't really thinking it was about me at all. And so obviously I didn't do enough research on it to know that. But I just remember thinking, okay, what do I tell them? And they said, you're going to be a different person. And they need to know that. And I have definitely seen that transformation in myself, and my family has seen it. And I think it's been good for them too. There's a lot of things that I probably wasn't doing in the best way and needed to learn. And, all the things I learned about visibility, I still had those issues at home too. So it taught me a lot personally and professionally, and being a coach and being willing to say, I have a voice that matters and I want to help people, and this is what I'm going to do to make that happen. They've been very supportive. So I think it's been an interesting journey just to see how I've evolved and how everything, it's kind of the ripple effect, right? When you drop a pebble in a pond, has that ripple effect. I think everybody feels that, when you change, there's changes for them, and maybe that's scary for them. I don't know. It's a really interesting point.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable, but the discomfort is good. Just got to kind of choose your discomfort if you want to grow in some way. Okay, so Sue, I'm going to have you share where people can find you. And I know you already did that in episode 14, but I'd love for you to do it again.
Sure. Yes. So you can find me on LinkedIn. It's under Susan Barber Coaching, but you can look under Susan M. Barber and find me there. My website is susanmbarber.com. Most of the time I am out there posting and talking about things. I have my own podcast too called The Visibility Factor, along with the book that Sherry mentioned. And I'm super excited for this workbook that's coming out next year that's really going to help people learn how to use language and show their value to people so that they can be recognized and positioned for opportunities. And it's something that I had some of that in the book, but I've expanded it in a bigger way. So I'm excited to bring that out to people.
I'm excited about that too. That's going to be fantastic. All right. Well, any last words, Sue?
I think you can be a Sue or a Sherry and travel out in the world in the best way that makes you happy.
Not travel.
Yeah, or not travel. You're right. Good point. Yeah, I think there's no right way to do this. And I think I was, if I think about it from the past, there's probably a lot of doing it the right way I was trying to focus on. And I think there's so much more enjoyment in just being, right? And just being present and enjoying whatever it is you're experiencing. And I've definitely been living that this year for sure, trying to create experiences where I'm traveling and going out with friends, or just doing things like going to concerts or whatever it is that, you might tend to say, oh, I don't have time for that. But I've just seen too many people, leave this earth too early, and I just don't want to have any regrets. And so it's something that I'm really intentional about now.
Yeah, because life is just a series of moments, and we have to, live the moments that we want to live. So thank you so much, Sue. This was fun.
Thanks for having me.
Every conversation with you is fun. This was super fun. All right. Well, thank you so much, Sue, for being here. Thank you, everyone, for listening. But just some things to keep in mind as you're starting off the year and thinking, about who you are, what you want, and not clinging to maybe an identity that someone else may have put upon you, and just figuring out, okay, who are you? What do you want to do? And know that you can. So, all right. Well, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Dash Mindset Podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast player, tell your friends, and leave us a review. Follow me on my social media platforms highlighted in the show notes, and get in touch with me at thedashmindset.com. Share the topics you'd like me to explore in future episodes. Thanks again for listening to the Dash Mindset Podcast. We'll see you next time. Design and differentiate your Dash your way and make today amazing.